The misunderstanding that changed everything. Marcus Chung adjusted his research equipment for the third time that morning, watching the alien sunrise paint the rocky landscape in shades of purple and gold. The remote research station on Kepler 442c had been his home for 6 months now, and he still found the double suns breathtaking. As a xenobiologist, he dreamed of this assignment since graduation. Finally, a chance to study alien life forms in their natural habitat. The station hummed quietly around him, its solar panels drinking in the morning light. Dr. Sarah Williams, the station commander, had returned to Earth for supplies 3 weeks ago, leaving Marcus alone with his research and the automated systems. He didn't mind the solitude. The work was fascinating, and the planet's wildlife kept him busy. He was examining samples from the crystalline forests when the first tremor shook the station. Marcus looked up from his microscope, frowning. The seismic sensors hadn't detected any earthquake activity. The tremor came again, stronger this time, followed by a distant roar that definitely wasn't geological dot through the reinforced windows. Marcus saw smoke rising from the eastern hills. Something had crashed out there, and it was big. He quickly gathered his emergency kit, including the universal translator and medical supplies, then climbed into the station's all-terrain vehicle. The crash site was worse than he'd expected. A sleek, organic-looking spacecraft had carved a deep furrow through the crystalline trees before slamming into a rocky outcrop. The hull was cracked, and strange blue fluid leaked from several ruptures. But what caught Marcus's attention was the figure lying motionless beside the wreckage. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Humanoid in basic shape, but clearly not human. Her skin had a subtle golden hue with darker markings that resembled tiger stripes. Most striking were the pointed ears atop her head and the long, flexible tail that twitched weakly in the dust. She wore form-fitting armor that had protected her from the worst of the crash, but blood seeped from several wounds. Marcus approached carefully, his xenobiology training taking over. First rule, assume intelligence. Second rule, do no harm. He knelt beside her and began a quick medical assessment. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and her pulse, while rapid, seemed strong. The wounds were serious but not immediately life-threatening. "Hey," he said softly, not expecting a response. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, revealing pupils that contracted to vertical slits in the bright sunlight. They were stunning, shade of violet, and they fixed on his face with unmistakable intelligence. She tried to sit up but winced in pain. "Easy," Marcus said, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've been hurt. I'm going to help you, okay?" She studied him intently, her head tilting slightly. When she spoke, her voice was melodic despite the pain. The words were completely alien, but the universal translator kicked in a moment later. "Human," she said, the word carrying a note of surprise. Help?" "Yes," Marcus replied, relieved that communication was possible. "I'm Marcus. I'm a scientist. Let me treat your wounds." As he worked, cleaning and bandaging her injuries, she watched him with those remarkable eyes. Her name, she told him, was Lyra. She was a scout for something called the Caroni Federation, investigating reports of hostile alien activity in this sector. "The Zephyrians," she explained as Marcus sealed a particularly deep cut on her arm. "They hunt, they kill, they take worlds." Marcus nodded, though he'd never heard of either species. Human space exploration was still in its infancy compared to the galactic community. "Well, you're safe now. My research station isn't far. I can treat you properly there." Something in her expression changed when he said that. She stared at him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You take me to your dwelling?" "My station, yes." "You need medical attention. I can't provide." "Out here." Lyra's tail swished once, then curled around her leg. She nodded slowly, but there was something in her eyes now that hadn't been there before. A kind of recognition, or perhaps realization. Getting her back to the station proved challenging. Her leg was injured, and she had to lean on him for support. During the slow journey, Marcus learned more about her species. The Caroni were warriors and explorers, highly advanced but bound by complex cultural traditions. They valued honor, courage, and loyalty above all else. Your people, Lyra asked as they climbed into the vehicle. They mate for life? Marcus blinked at the unexpected question. Some do, others don't. It varies by individual and culture. Why do you ask? She didn't answer immediately, instead studying his face with that same intense expression. Among Caroni, bonds are sacred. When made, they cannot be broken. That sounds like a beautiful tradition, Marcus said, starting the vehicle. He was thinking like a xenobiologist, fascinated by the cultural implications. Back at the station, Marcus set up a temporary medical bay in the main lab. Lyra's injuries were healing remarkably fast, but she still needed rest. As he worked, she continued to watch him with that strange intensity. Every time he moved close to treat a wound, her breathing quickened slightly. Marcus, she said suddenly, as he was checking the bandage on her forehead. You know what you did? I helped you, he said, confused. I couldn't just leave you there. No, she said, her voice taking on a formal tone. When you found me, when you touched my ears. Marcus frowned, trying to remember. He'd been checking for head injuries, making sure she didn't have a concussion. His hands had brushed against her ears several times during the examination. I was checking for trauma. Did I hurt you? Lyra's eyes widened. You ... you did not know. You know what? She sat up straighter, wincing slightly from her injuries. Among my people, to touch another's ears is ... intimate. It is done only between mates, or those who wish to become mates. It is how we bond. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Oh, no, Lyra, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I was just trying to help. I didn't mean you did not choose me. The pain in her voice stopped him cold. He looked at her carefully, seeing not just the alien features, but the very human emotions written on her face. Confusion, hurt, and something that might have been hope. Lyra, he said gently, in my culture, touching someone's ears means nothing. I was performing a medical examination. I didn't know about your customs. She stared at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. I understand. You reject the bond. It's not rejection, Marcus said quickly. It's just ... I can't enter into something I don't understand. And you don't really know me. How can you want to bond with a stranger? You saved me, she said simply. You brought me to your home. You tend my wounds. You show kindness to an alien you have never seen before. This tells me much about your character. Before Marcus could respond, the station's proximity alarms began blaring. The main screen flickered to life, showing multiple contacts approaching fast from orbit. The ships were sleek and predatory-looking, nothing like Lyra's organic vessel. Zephyrians. Lyra breathed, struggling to her feet. They followed my trail. Marcus watched in horror as the ships descended toward the planet's surface. There were 6 of them, each bristling with weapons. The lead ship was already scanning the area around the research station. They will kill you, Lyra said, her voice steady despite her injuries. They show no mercy to other species. Marcus's mind raced. The station's defenses were minimal, designed to keep out wildlife, not hostile aliens. His communication array could reach Earth, but help was months away. He looked at Lyra, who was checking her sidearm despite her wounds. What do they want? He asked. Resources. Territory. Sometimes they hunt for sport. She met his eyes. Sorry, Marcus. I brought this danger to you. Don't apologize, he said, his voice growing firm. You're hurt and stranded. It's not your fault they followed you. The ships landed in a defensive formation around the station. Through the viewports, Marcus could see tall insectoid figures emerging from the vessels. They moved with predatory grace, weapons ready. How many? Lyra asked, moving to the window despite her injuries. 20, maybe 25. Marcus was already moving, gathering supplies. There's an emergency bunker beneath the station. We can... No. Lyra's voice was steel. I will not hide while you are in danger. You're injured. You can barely walk. She turned to face him, and Marcus was struck by the fierce determination in her violet eyes. You showed me kindness when you could have left me to die. You brought me to safety, you tended my wounds. Among my people, this creates a debt of honor. Lyra, whether you accept the mate bond or not, she continued, I will not abandon you to these hunters. This I swear by the twin moons of my homeworld. A massive impact shook the station. The Zephyrians were testing the outer defenses. Marcus looked at the weapon diagnostics on his screen. The station's shield generators would hold for maybe 10 minutes against a sustained assault. All right, he said, his voice calm despite the fear clawing at his chest. If we're going to do this, we do it together. But I need to know what we're up against. Lyra smiled for the first time since he'd found her, showing sharp canine teeth. Zephyrians are strong and fast, but they rely on brute force. They expect their enemies to run or surrender quickly. They do not adapt well to changing tactics. Good to know. Marcus was already pulling up the station's schematics on his tablet. I know every inch of this place. If we can separate them, maybe we can even the odds. Another impact rocked the station. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power grid automatically switched to backup systems. Through the communication array, Marcus could hear harsh, chittering voices issuing demands in alien language. They want me to surrender, Lyra translated. They offer to kill you. Quickly if I come out now. How generous of them, Marcus said dryly. He was checking the station's maintenance systems, looking for anything that might help. Can you use our weapons? They're designed for humans? Lyra examined the energy rifle he handed her, testing its weight and balance. It will serve. But, Marcus, you should know if we fight together, if we defend each other, my people will consider it a form of bonding ritual. Even if you do not accept the mate bond, you will be considered an ally of the Karenai Federation. Marcus looked at her, this fierce alien warrior who had crash-landed into his quiet research mission. She was offering him something valuable alliance with an advanced spacefaring species. But more than that, she was offering partnership, respect, and trust, Lyra, he said, meeting her eyes. I may not understand your customs, and I may have accidentally started something I wasn't prepared for, but I do understand friendship. And I understand that sometimes you have to stand up to bullies, even when the odds are against you. She nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Then we fight, Marcus Chen of Earth. Let us show these hunters what happens when they underestimate the bonds between allies. The station's outer door exploded inward with a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The first Zephyrian warrior stepped through the breach, its weapon ready, expecting to find cowering prey. Instead, it found Marcus and Lyra waiting in the shadows, ready to fight for their lives and each other. Alliance forged in battle. The first Zephyrian through the breach was massive, easily 7 feet tall with a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like black metal. Its compound eyes swept the lab, and mandibles clicked with predatory anticipation. Marcus had seen plenty of Earth insects, but this was something far more dangerous intelligence behind those alien eyes. And weapons in its clawed hands, Marcus held his breath in the maintenance shaft above the main lab, watching through the ventilation grate as Lyra pressed herself against the wall beside the ruined entrance. Her injuries were still healing, but her movements were fluid and controlled. She'd explained the plan quickly, used the station's layout to divide their attackers, forcing them to come through narrow passages where their numbers wouldn't matter as much. The Zephyrian warrior took another step into the lab, weapon raised. That's when Lyra struck. She moved like liquid lightning, rolling under the alien's guard and slashing upward with a blade that seemed to extend from her gauntlet. The warrior's shriek echoed through the station as green fluid sprayed across the floor. Before it could recover, Marcus dropped from the ceiling shaft, his energy rifle firing at point-blank range. The combined assault dropped the first attacker, but more were coming. Marcus could hear their clicking communication echoing through the corridors. This way, he whispered, leading Lyra through a maintenance door that was barely wide enough for him to squeeze through. The Zephyrians would have trouble following through such a narrow passage. They moved through the station's hidden spaces, using maintenance tunnels and service corridors that Marcus knew by heart. Behind them, the hunters spread through the main areas, their harsh voices growing frustrated as they found empty rooms. They're splitting up, Lyra observed, listening to the alien chatter. Good. We can handle them in smaller groups. Marcus nodded, checking his rifle's power cell. There's a choke point at the main power junction. If we can get them to funnel through there, ... I understand. You are a good tactician, Marcus Chun. They set up their ambush at the power junction, where the main corridors converged into a single passage. Marcus had rigged several of his research drones with explosive charges, turning scientific equipment into improvised weapons. Lyra crouched beside him, her violet eyes gleaming in the emergency lighting. When I was young, she said quietly, my mother told me stories of the great alliances. Warriors from different worlds, fighting side by side against common enemies. I never thought I would live such a story. I never thought I'd be fighting bug-like aliens in a space station, Marcus replied. But here we are. 3 Zephyrians appeared at the far end of the corridor, moving cautiously. Their leader gestured to the others, and they began advancing in formation. Marcus waited until they were directly under his improvised explosives. Before triggering the drones, the explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the attackers were down, and the 3rd was retreating, ichor streaming from multiple wounds. 8 down, maybe 12 to go, Marcus said, reloading his weapon. You count like a warrior, Lyra observed with approval. Always knowing your enemy's strength. They moved to their next position, but the Zephyrians had learned from their losses. Instead of advancing through the corridors, they began cutting through the station's hull with plasma torches. New entry points opened throughout the facility, allowing them to bypass Marcus's carefully planned choke points. Adaptive, Lyra noted as they watched the aliens streaming through multiple breaches. More intelligent than I gave them credit. We need a new plan, Marcus said, his mind racing. Something they won't expect. That's when he remembered the station's atmospheric processor. The system was designed to convert the planet's natural gases into breathable air for humans, but it could be reversed. If he could flood the station with the planet's native atmosphere, which was mildly toxic to most species. Can your people breathe the local air? He asked quickly. For short periods, yes. Why? Marcus was already moving toward the environmental. Controls. Because I'm going to make this place very uncomfortable for our guests. It took him 3 minutes to reverse the atmospheric processor and override the safety protocols. Warning lights flashed throughout the station as the air recyclers began pulling in the planet's natural atmosphere, nitrogen-heavy mix, with trace amounts of compounds that would cause respiratory distress in most carbon-based life forms. The effect on the Zephyrians was immediate. Their clicking communications became labored, and their movements grew sluggish. Several retreated toward their ships, while others pressed forward with increasing desperation. Clever, Lyra said, though. Marcus noticed she was breathing more carefully now. But this gives us limited time. Then let's make it count. They moved through the station systematically, using the Zephyrians' weakened state to their advantage. Marcus's knowledge of the facility and Lyra's combat skills proved to be a devastating combination. They worked together with increasing synchronization, each anticipating the other's movements. During a brief lull in the fighting, as they waited for the next group of attackers to locate them, Lyra touched Marcus's arm. You fight well for a scientist, she said. You're not bad for someone who crashed a spaceship, he replied, trying to lighten the mood. She laughed. They sound like silver bells. Marcus, I must tell you something. When my people learn of this battle, they will sing songs of it. A human and a Karani standing together against overwhelming odds. It will become legend. I'm just trying to survive, Marcus said. No, Lyra shook her head. You could have hidden in a bunker. You could have tried to negotiate with them. Instead, you chose to fight beside me. That is the action of a warrior, not merely a survivor. Before Marcus could respond, the station's communication array crackled to life. A new voice filled the air, speaking in the same musical language as Lyra. Her eyes widened in shock. Impossible, she breathed. What is it? My ship. I sent a distress signal before I crashed. The message has reached a Kureni patrol fleet. She was listening intently to the transmission. They are 3 hours away. Marcus felt a surge of hope, but it was tempered by reality. 3 hours is a long time. We've got maybe 20 more minutes before the atmosphere starts affecting me too. Then we hold for 20 minutes, Lyra said simply. And we trust that help will arrive. The final assault came with brutal intensity. The remaining Zephyrians, realizing their prey was not defenseless, attacked in a coordinated rush. Marcus and Lyra found themselves back to back in the main lab, surrounded by enemies who had learned to respect their fighting ability. Marcus, Lyra said as they prepared for what might be their last stand, if we do not survive this, I want you to know that I am honored to have fought beside you. We're going to survive, Marcus said firmly. And when we do, I want to learn more about your people, about your customs, your traditions, your stories, even the mating rituals. There was humor in her voice despite their desperate situation. Especially those, Marcus replied. I may have started something accidentally, but I'd like to understand it properly. Lyra's tail swished once, and Marcus caught a glimpse of her smile. I would like that very much. The Zephyrians attacked from 3 directions simultaneously. Marcus and Lyra moved like a single organism, covering each other's weaknesses and amplifying each other's strengths. Energy bolts and plasma blasts filled the air, turning the lab into a war zone. Just when their ammunition was running low and their position seemed hopeless, a new sound filled the air, the distinctive whine of Kureni energy weapons. The station's main viewport exploded inward as sleek fighters dove through the atmosphere, their weapons cutting down the Zephyrian ships on the ground. Kureni warriors, tall and graceful like Lyra but wearing heavier armor, flowed through the breaches they created. The remaining Zephyrians found themselves caught between the humans and their rescuers, and the battle turned decisively in minutes. It was over. The station was secured. The Zephyrians were either dead or fleeing, and Marcus found himself face to face with an entire squad of Kureni warriors, their leader, a imposing figure with silver markings on his golden skin, approached Marcus with what seemed like respect. He spoke to Lyra in their native language, his tone formal and questioning. He asks about the battle, Lyra translated. I told him we fought as bonded allies. And what does that mean exactly? Marcus asked. The Kureni leader studied Marcus intently, then spoke again. Lyra's translation came with obvious pleasure. He says that any human who fights beside a Kureni warrior is welcome among our people. He offers you formal alliance between your species and ours, with all the rights and protections that entails. Marcus looked around the destroyed station, at the evidence of the battle they'd fought together, at Lyra's proud smile. A few hours ago, he'd been a lonely xenobiologist studying alien plants. Now, he was apparently a key figure in first contact between 2 species. Tell him I accept, Marcus said, on behalf of humanity. The formal ceremony took place 3 days later, aboard a Kureni warship that had arrived to investigate the battle. Marcus stood beside Lyra as their respective peoples signed alliance agreements and mutual defense pacts. The accidental bond had become something much larger, a bridge between worlds. So, Marcus said during a quiet moment as they watched Earth, and Kureni ships working together to repair the research station, about those mating customs you mentioned, ... Lyra's laugh was warm and bright. The ear touching was only the beginning, Marcus Chen. Among my people, true bonding requires understanding, respect, and choice made freely by both parties. I'm interested in learning more, Marcus said. If you're willing to teach me, I would be honored, Lyra replied. After all, we make an excellent team. Marcus looked out at the ships of 2 species working side by side, born from an accidental encounter and forged in battle. Sometimes the best alliances, he thought, were the ones you never saw coming, and sometimes the best bonds were the ones that started with a misunderstanding and grew into something beautiful and strong.